Well, we're back with Paul Turner, the senior pastor and founder of the Gentle Spirit Christian Church. So Paul, as you took this journey here, the youth thing, you can't be ordained a Methodist, and you're sitting here with clergy collar. So now, how did we get to that point?
The long and short of the after leaving the Methodist Church, after Bobby was killed, I left. I went to Cincinnati. I needed this fresh beginning, I guess. Geographic cure, I guess is what you would call it. But it was really bad before I left. I mean, I'd had my car repossessed. I was drinking incredibly heavily, and I think that's maybe what I was trying to get at in the first section. When you lose that relationship, when you lose that idea of faith, I just didn't care anymore. I had a great job that I lost because I wasn't showing up. You know, drink the night before. I look back at it now and go, my God, the people that I had in my house. I'm like, oh Lord. And I had some friends in Cincinnati who said, look, if you really want to start over, come on down. And I was so stupid. These were people that were just, well, this is a family thing, so we won't talk about why they really wanted me to move down there, but it wasn't good. And I had told them yes. It was right around the holidays. It was the end of June in 1982, and I said, okay, come and get me. And they said, well, can't you wait till after the 4th of July? I said, no, because if you don't, I'm not going to be here. And then I realized what that was all about, and I'm like, you know, this is dumb. So I had a weapon in my apartment at the time, and said, you know, this is it. I wrote this eloquent note, taped it. Now, you ready for this? I taped it on the outside of my apartment door to the guys that would come to get me. Walked back into the bedroom and pulled that gun down, and as I was pulling it down out of the corner of my eye, I've always had over my bed my crucifix, and out of the corner of my eye, I caught that, and of course, see, I was baptized Catholic, raised Methodist, so, you know, maybe that explains the conflict. But anyway,
that explains a lot.
Yeah, it explains a lot, doesn't it? But I got hit with that Catholic guilt, you know. I was about to commit the ultimate sin. The only sin worse than being a homosexual, apparently, was committing suicide. So me and God had this chat for probably the first time in a long time. And I told God how I felt and how frustrated I was. And look, and now I'm going to Cincinnati. I don't have a car. I don't have anybody to live with. I don't care whether it's a man or woman. I don't have a job. And these people that I'm living with, I mean, you know, what the hell, man? And if you think you're such a great God and I'm not supposed to blow my brains out tonight, and by the way, remember, I'm drinking Jack. Jack and me were good friends at that point. So about every 20 seconds or so, down a shot, more yelling at God. And it's like, you're such a great God, you give me any of that. Any of that, I'll go back to ministry. Now that's really kind of the last thing, in all honesty, that I remember before I hear this incredible pounding on my door. And just feeling like there's 1,000 people in my head, because I had, at that point, drank enough, I passed out. And I think that was God, in an odd sort of way. People said, it cost you to drink. Well, I didn't pull the trigger. And then I realized, oh my God, I hear this, it's the police. And I'm like, there's a gun, I got it, you know. So I finally go to the door. It took me, long story short, it took me 20 minutes to talk these folks out of the fact that I wasn't going to hurt myself. And I couldn't figure out what the hell they were doing there. And then here's John hanging on to this note going, we thought you were dead. And you didn't answer the door. And it was awful. But then I get down to Cincinnati, and typical, I went to look for a job and kind of got out of the funk a little bit, the idea of going and doing things. And I ran into somebody who told me about the bars. So I went to the bars. I went out on Friday night. I was looking to carouse. Met a person at that bar that night that caught my attention. Again, the abbreviated thing is I had to chase him down the street, and I introduced myself as being new in town. Great line, right? Of course, now when he tells that story, he'll tell you that he thought he was going to get mugged and there was going to be this screaming sissy in the middle of 4th Street, Cincinnati. But anyway, we started dating, and it got serious in a hurry. And all of a sudden, we're at the zoo one day, and I'm going, oh my God. You know, I had gotten a job. I spent the last $200 I had in a car. We were moving in together, and we were moving towards this really heavy-duty kind of like this is forever kind of relationship. And I went, oh shit. No, that can't be. Well, that's okay. I don't have to keep my word because there's no place I can be a pastor and be gay. So I'll tell him, and then he'll tell
You keep your word to what?
to God, because I had said to God in that prayer before I passed out that I'd go back to ministry.
Okay.
Anyhow, I told Bill that story, thinking that he would sit there and look at me and go, okay, well, that's a really nice story, but there are no churches that accept gay people. Well, when I tell him the story, he goes, oh, well, there's MCC. I said, excuse me? He says, there's MCC. And I said, what's that? And he proceeds to tell me that it's a church where gay people can go, and it's okay to be gay. You know, now I was just like, okay, yeah, right, whatever. So we go to look for the church, and we got there late, and when we got there, the very first words that I hear as I walk through those doors is, behold, I have done this new thing. Do you not perceive it? And you know, I just kind of stopped and I'm looking around and there's guy, girl. You know, sometimes God's got to hit me with a 2x4. We get to communion, and I wasn't going to take communion because that was like, you know, that's too Catholic. I was pretty sure that God would strike me dead, especially if this wasn't right. Of course, Bill leans over at that point, puts his hand on my shoulder and goes, it could be our first communion together. And I was like, okay. So we go walking up the middle of the aisle to get up there for communion, and I got to admit that the activist in me would thought that was pretty cool, because it was like, this was defiant. We get up front, and they've got the minister and deacons lined up, and we end up with the minister. Now remember, this guy doesn't know me, he's never met me, this is the first time I've come up to church. Billy had maybe been there once or twice before. He starts praying, and he ignores Bill. The end of his prayer was, and God, let your servant know that he no longer has to be afraid, that he has come home and he can answer his call. Well, I was a wreck. You know, cried all the way back, and Bill's like, are you okay, are you okay? And it's like, no, I'm not okay, because I should have never made this promise to God. I should have never made that promise. Long and short of it is, I finished up my studies, was licensed in MCC in 1986. I was ordained in 1989. And the independent spirit really kind of took over me in 94, which led me to
Gentle Spirit.
Gentle
Back
Spirit.
just a minute, we'll talk about Gentle Spirit. Once again, if you're watching the podcast, enjoy the music and the pictures. And if you're on YouTube, go to part 3. See you in just a minute.